Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to video note 14, if I'm correct. I think it's 14. And a little brighter in the pastor cave today because you can see the vivid sunshine flowing through the doorway there. And we've had some snow, but we also have had some sun. And it's a little on the cold side out there, but really not too bad for January, and quite pretty actually. Talk to me in a month, and I won't think that any snow is pretty. But right now, it's still pretty. Hey, we have been for a long time now in Exodus chapter 3, and I don't know how much longer we're going to be there. I don't exactly plan this out, but we got to the part where Moses hears from God. This conversation begins between God and Moses. And what we covered last time was this idea of God hearing and seeing. I've surely seen the affliction. This is verse 7, by the way. The Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings. And I have come, verse 8 says, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and here's the first key point here today, and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And then he names all the tribes, groups of people that are currently living in that land. Which would be the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. So if you really look at that, there's a really important principle here, because we have a tendency to think of deliverance, the idea of someone being delivered from bondage to something, or being stuck in something, and or deliverance from disease, for instance, something like that. We have a tendency to think of that strictly as a bringing out from, or bringing away from. So to be taken out of bondage. But if you really look at what God is saying here, is that the whole package of his deliverance is not just to take them out of bondage, but to bring them somewhere, to bring them somewhere else than where they are. And lots of times our thoughts on deliverance are very short-sighted. We see somebody in need. We have somebody in our life who has a drug addiction, or some kind of other problem like that, in which they are really bound to that thing. And we think to ourselves, well, God, if you just deliver them, if you just take them out of there, just deliver them. When really what God wants to do in all of our lives is to deliver us out from where we are, but deliver us to a better place. Deliver us to his choice land, his place where he wants us to go. And so it's really much more appropriate for us when we are praying for somebody that we care for, or praying that somebody will be delivered, that we would pray not only that they'll be delivered, but then that they'll be able to get to that next place, that next step. Two-part deliverance from and deliverance to. And that's really important. Lots of times, I might be wrestling with a sin in my life, or wrestling with some kind of a habitual problem in my life, and all I can think of is deliverance from. If I could just get out of this habit, or if I could just get out of this sin. But we forget that God really wants us to take us from that point to another place, a better place, to a beautiful place in our lives, where we're not only talking about deliverance from, but we're talking about living in the place spiritually where God wants us to be. That's the whole package of deliverance. And then I also find this really interesting. The Lord continues in verse 9. He says, "And now behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Okay, so again, God is hearing the cry, and He is seeing the oppression. Okay, so we talked about that last time. For God to see and hear means that He's going to act. Okay, and then He says in verse 10, He says to Moses, "Come, I will send you to Pharaoh that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." Okay, so so we look at that and we say, okay, these people have been in bondage. They're here in bondage, and they need to be set free. And God has heard their cry. What supernatural thing, what miracle is God gonna do to set these people free? And we know that later on that there are miracles that accompany all of this. But God's first response to this is, I've seen this, I've heard this, and it needs to happen. And so Moses, I'm sending you. I'm sending you. See, Moses is actually the kind of the first round of miracle, long before the 10 plagues and any other that takes place. God's direct response to the cry of his people is a person. It's Moses. This is what's going on. I've heard it, and so I am sending you. Isn't that interesting? Because we tend to think of all the spiritual pyrotechnics involved, and the frogs and the fire and the bloody water, and all those kinds of things. But God's direct response to the cry of his people is that he's sending Moses. And it's important that we know this because you are the miracle that somebody's waiting for. And I don't mean that in a proud sense, or that we're trying to take God's place in something, okay? But God is calling you as a human being, and if you are a follower of Christ, God is calling you to be the response to somebody else's cry. And that should really give us the ultimate high. Sometimes we spend our lives seeking, God, what is it you really want me to do, and what should I do with my life, and all those things. But God is calling you to be God's response to somebody else's cry. There's somebody out there that needs truth. There's somebody out there that needs the love of God. There's somebody out there that needs a human being to extend mercy and grace to them. And that person that God has called to do that is you. It's not a thing. It's not a miracle that falls from the sky. It's you. And that should be a great encouragement to us that, we're not just plopped on this earth to, either get saved or not get saved and then just kind of wander around and do stuff. But we have, we are God's specific response to what somebody else needs in their lives. And that kind of, creates a great connectivity, not only to my neighbor or my friends or the people that I run into, the ministry opportunities I run into, but it also connects us again with God. So we still have this God connection, and we have that connection that goes out from us into the world around us. If we understand this verse, we can never be isolated if we understand this verse, because we are to be around enough in other people's lives so that we can be God's answer for them. All right? Have a wonderful day. God bless you. Vita brevis gloria aeterna. Life is short. Glory is eternal. We'll talk to you again in a couple of days.